Tokyo, Mexico City, Munich, Montreal, Moscow. What have all these cities in common? Well, as you may have guessed or remembered, they're the venues of the Olympic Games since 1936, when the last pre-war Olympics were held in Berlin. One Irish journalist has been to cover them all. He's J.J. Walsh, editor, proprietor, and I think it could be said chief foreign correspondent of the Waterford weekly paper, the Munster Express. In recent editions, since his return from the Soviet Union, he's been doing what he always does in his return. He's been writing at length of his experiences of the Moscow Olympics and the Soviet Union. He came into our Waterford studio this morning, and I first asked him how this year's Moscow Olympics compared to his first games, run in Hitler's Germany 44 years ago.
Well, the Berlin ones were well run, and the presence of Hitler made sure of that. There was more youthful people seen then, because he was encouraging the strength through joy at that time. And he had also organised the stormtroopers. We saw quite a number of those. But they weren't as well organised and weren't as nice as the Russians. The Germans, I always found, even at the last Olympics that were held in Germany, that's in Munich, they're a little bit too aggressive, you see. They're a bit too disciplined, and they make it obvious. The Russians are very careful to get their way, but they do it much more gently and less obvious.
What were your impressions of the Soviet Union itself? How did it compare to the country you expected?
Well, I was disappointed in the way that land is wasted there, that all the boys that should be on the land are in the Army, Navy and Air Force. There were tremendous stretches of land that weren't fully productive. And there was a lot of fors and against. The streets were models of cleanliness and tidiness. Everybody minded their own business. But I was very disappointed the way people are treated generally. They just have to obey, and they do so sullenly, but they know they have to. The shopping is quite an experience. The counters are lined by 3 lines of people, each counter, and one has to look over the shoulders of the others in front, and eventually you get to the front and make your purchase. Then it takes 3 efforts before you finally own and possess the goods. You have to get a docket and then go to another place and go. So it's 3 efforts you have to make. It's quite an experience, and not all the big government shops, all the big shops are owned by the government. Not all of them have lifts or any means of getting to the top floors, and that is quite a physical effort that one doesn't forget.
Did you introduce yourself as a journalist and say you were writing these articles to the authorities there? And how did they respond to that? What facilities did you get? Well,
I went out as an official of the Olympic Committee of Ireland, and we all had to wear identification cards. They were hung in front of white twine around our necks, and at all times you had to wear those. I must say that outside of Moscow, I was treated everywhere else, because the places were smaller, as a VIP, myself and my daughter who accompanied me, up at the Leningrad for the opening ceremony of the football. That was my first experience of the segregation between the foreigners and the Russians. Our guides and our interpreter, we had 2 as a rule, they would not be let into the same positions ourselves. They wouldn't be let into any of the rooms at the airports where we were. We were segregated as VIPs the whole time. On the boats viewing the yachting, we had a crew of 22. We had 4 plainclothes, you could call them Secret Service men, and about 4 police, uniformed police, and an interpreter and a guide. now an expert in yachting. We had all these for just my daughter and I, and we had these for 4 days. Then we got tired of that, and we went out in a small boat, a speedboat, and we had 4 there, but there were 3 of them girls and 1 man. But we were watched so closely that we spent most of the time when we thought they'd be within earshot in talking Irish. We both spoke Irish because we felt they all knew English and that they could bug us.
Did you think that they thought you were a security risk or something, or a spy?
Well, they took no chances, and we became very friendly with some of our guides, and we invited them out to dinner. But when we arrived at the restaurants, they weren't allowed to sit with us. They went and had a drink, and we joined them at another counter. They wouldn't be allowed to sit where we would.
Why not?
Well, I'd like to know. I felt they were being humiliated. But we asked about it then, and they evaded the question, and we insisted that the next group that we asked out, that they'd sit with us. But they weren't supposed to have as many courses as us. So it was a miserable meal, and then we asked them to along to our hotel, and they wouldn't be allowed to go into our hotel. And then we said we had presents for them, and they wouldn't wait for the presents. They said send a postcard. They seemed to live in fear. That was my impression, and I felt very sorry for them because some of these people were very refined and artistic, and were very well up on sports as well. But they lived in a certain amount of trepidation.
You're not thinking of emigrating to the Soviet Union yourself?
I wouldn't. I go back again on a holiday because they're very artistic people. Their music and art are really worthwhile, and they're very courteous, and they're very like the nice Irish people. They are really, and I feel extremely sorry for them. I'd like for a holiday again, and I wouldn't mind going back, but not to live there. It's the last place in the world I'd like to live. Of course, I'm, unfortunately, one could be termed a capitalist. That's in the opposite camp.
J.J. Walsh, editor and, as he says, capitalist, proprietor of the Munster Express.